everybody, we're the good doctors of Abbey Research. I am the esteemed Dr. Erin.
I am the emitable Dr. Kristen.
Who has a frog in her throat, apparently. Excuse me. We are doctors. We're social scientists who love talking about and studying and having conversations and yelling at each other in WhatsApp about everything culture related, popped, lived, history, contemporary, you name it. We'll talk about it. We like to have these conversations to focus on building empathy and really critically digging into what it means to be an inclusive community wherever and that community is and whatever size it is. And we'll have those conversations about anything. If you just visit our YouTube channel, you shall see we talk about Orthodox Judaism, sexual assaults, Boy Scouts of America,
Britney Spears.
Pick a feature. We'll talk about it because it has something to say about culture, and so do we. But we also like to hear from y'all. So make sure wherever you are listening and or watching this to do all of the things that are necessary if you like our commentary to keep hearing it. But what are we here for today?
Today we are talking about the film Promising Young Woman, which is written and directed by Emerald Fennell, who is now my Patronus.
Who is now, yes, my secret best friend.
We first encountered her as playing Camilla Parker Bowles in this most recent season of The Crown, and the lady is multifaceted. So it's part of our coverage of we like to talk about stuff that's streaming because it's easy to access, and really anything that's streaming is fair game. We tend to focus on people who've been historically ignored from the narrative, so women and other marginalized communities. And then we wanted to even focus more on what's getting award buzz this particular year, because even as we've said frequently in this series, awards don't matter. We get that, but they do because they determine what else gets made and what other stories are worth studios' money and attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, Margot Robbie once got a whole lot of attention and money, and she won for I, Tonya. And so she started a production company. And so Emerald Fennell pitched this story to her, and now we have this movie. And this is kind of how Hollywood works. We like to pay attention to stuff that gets awards buzz because it can tell us what the values are. If you would like to hear us rant about Green Book, you just let us know. So, happy to explain where that comes from. So today's, like we said, Promising Young Woman. Full disclosure, we both love this movie. I use the word favorite coming up, like it might enter my top 10 of films I recommend for people to watch. Just really, really well executed. Tells the story of a coffee shop worker, medical school dropout named Cassie. Absolutely no one knows that every single week she goes to a different bar, acts drunk off her nut, to definitely the point where she couldn't consent. She always has a nice young man try to take her home and then essentially try to have sex with her. As soon as she realizes what they're doing, she, of course, immediately becomes sober because she has been, freaks them out, and then goes home and makes a mark in her hash little book of how many men this has been. And by the time we meet Cassie, she's on, I don't know, page 40 of little hash marks. The first dude that we encounter her doing this with is Adam Brody. And I want to bring that up really quickly because, first of all, we also get a lot of other great dudes in this, and we discovered that was intentional, that they cast men in their 30s in Hollywood who were known for being affable and who had played great characters before this. So the great villain of this movie is Chris Lowell.
Yeah.
Who most recently was an excellent character on Glow, and before that was an excellent character on Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars. I know. My notes just say it's Piz, and I got so sad. But
and we've got Schmidt from New Girl, and we've got the Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who we've never seen Superbad, but he's in that.
Yeah.
And then Adam Brody.
From the OC.
So this is the vibe they were going for, and they were very, very intentional about it.
Yep.
So we see Cassie's double life, but like she's completely arrested in her life and her development. We meet her on her 30th birthday. Her parents are befuddled by her. By the timeline, this activity has been going on for approximately 7 years. She runs into somebody that she was in med school with who was adorable and had a crush on her. They begin dating, all while she is enacting this experiment, because what we find out is that her best friend in medical school and throughout her entire life was assaulted at a party when they were in medical school, and the actions of that night led to a emotional break of some fashion, and then led to her dropping out of med school. And she is, when we are in the film, she has passed away. It is implied that she died by suicide, but it is never explicitly said.
Yeah.
This happened 7 years ago. So yeah, everybody in the video, which we discover eventually there's a video, was 23 years old. And the part of this movie, the real journey of this movie is that Cassie goes back to every single person who had a hand in that experience and essentially gives them a chance to apologize and repent. And their choice to do that or not determines the next set of her actions. Mm-hmm. This has been called a revenge movie, and I think that's a cheapening of it. Yeah. This is not Cassie's revenge. Mm-hmm. This is Cassie making people atone for the death of her friend, which is very, very different.
Mm-hmm. There's a difference between atonement and justice and revenge. There's a big difference. Yeah.
And so this is a very common story of anyone who's ever worked at a higher ed institution. You know that the instinct of the institution, especially until very, very recently, was always to protect the promising young man and not the promising young woman. And this is where I'll start getting off on soapboxes. So before I do that, is there anything else that you want to bring up about the plot, Dr. Erin?
I loved how intentional Emerald Fennell was in literally everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that can transition us from like the plot into talking about specifics. The script writing was phenomenal. It was also written by Emerald Fennell, who is like, well, I'm just waiting for them to make a Funko Pop so that we can buy one of her, because they've already done directors. So she needs to go up next to my Ava DuVernay. Mm-hmm. And the way that the movie was filmed as well, I think I will think about the scene where Cassie was staring at the phone that Maddie, Allison Brie brought her, like zoom back, and you just see the phone sitting on the table for like years. I will think
about the scene with the construction workers for years.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll dig into some of the why behind these scenes. But the language for me and the script writing was so powerful, because this film is like a treatise on the language we have constructed in society around accusations and claims of sexual assault and sexual violence.
Yeah.
It is everything you've ever heard when reports like this happen, and we get into the news cycle of covering it. The justifications for why we need to protect the men and why we victim blame the women. And I loved learning that the title of this movie references Brock Turner, who was convicted of raping an unconscious woman in an alley when he was a student at Stanford University, and was given 3 months for this act because he was a promising young man.
At Stanford University, he was a swimmer.
Because we can't jeopardize his future, was literally the argument that the judge made when he gave him a 3-month sentence.
And that young woman, by the way, has come out since and written a biography. Her name is Chantel Miller, and you can look for a review on our sister channel, Abby Research Reads, where we talk about memoirs and other books and in terms of equity and empathy and inclusivity. So you can look for an upcoming review of the New York Times bestseller, Say My Name.
Yes. Sisters brought me up to White Christmas. Sisters. But the language that we get from the first scene in this, which is a scene at a club where we meet Adam Brody and his friends, and Cassie, Carey Mulligan's character, is very clearly appearing to be inebriated and unaware of her circumstances. And I think that's what drew me into this film, and I knew from the first line that I was going to love it, because you start to hear these men say, oh, look at her. Oh, she's just asking for it.
Where are her friends?
Where are her friends? Who left her like this? Oh.
Some creep's gonna come along.
Somebody's gonna take advantage of her, but oh, maybe it'll be me. And they start to build up this bravado. And I know you have stuff you want to talk about. I want to talk about the construction of masculinity. So let me know where that slots into your rants stroke analysis. But I think launching into language can get us into some of our analysis of this film, because we also get, and I know this is a point you wanted to bring up too, the complicitness of women in this, which is so important. And we get that through the dean, the character of the dean, played by, I'm blanking on her name.
Connie Britton.
Connie Britton, who plays Mrs. Coach. Connie Britton. And Alison Brie, who plays Maddie, who's another woman who was a friend of theirs at medical school. And those two scenes are as valuable, if not more so, than the scenes when she confronts the men who are assaulting her at the time, and also who assaulted her friend Nina, because of the way that they perpetuate the system where men get excused through their language.
Yep.
I couldn't, and Connie Britton becomes the Stanford University, or the judge in this case, that's like, but his future.
Yeah, this is a Stanford stand-in. Like, this school is a Stanford stand-in.
Yeah, because it was filmed and set in Southern California as well.
Yeah.
And Alison Brie is the woman who polices,
other women's behavior.
Yeah. Other women's behavior, which we are all taught to do. Mm-hmm. And as we often like to talk about on the channel, you have to be carefully taught. And she was carefully taught to say, well, she's, but when you drink that much and when you have sex with so many people, like, what do you expect people to do? And, she was just, we all thought she was crying wolf, and all of the language that we have to maintain the system where men get excused and women get blamed is like the undercurrent of this whole film.
And the undercurrent of our culture. We live in a culture that allows rape to happen
all the time,
and is very permissible towards it. Even though the words sexual assault and rape never occur in this movie, which is also an intentional choice, because one of the things I love about how Cassie interacts with these people is that she makes them really uncomfortable, because she is not backing down. Like, they keep asking her to back down and to like meet with them and like to absolve them of something, and that she is not interested in absolving them of. And
even
so we encounter
the construction workers. She just stares at them.
That's my new thing for catcalling. I've decided if somebody catcalls me, I'm just going to stare at them.
It made them so uncomfortable, and they went from being the nice guys. Oh, hey, sweetheart, won't you give us a smile? Fuck you. Like,
and how many of us have that story where like the minute that we say no to a man, we're a bitch. Yep. Mm-hmm. Hi. Got that DM a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Many times. Yes.
There's so much to unpack here. I want to talk about two things really briefly, and either one of them connects to masculinity. So you just slot yourself in wherever you'd like to go, darling. One is that an institution will always protect itself. And one of the ways that it does that is to protect masculinity and to protect the young men that we revere within society. All of these men that we revere, by the way, all of them are white. Especially in this particular movie, there's only one black character, and he is not part of the promising young man paradigm. And so there's that. And then I would like to talk about the word young. In this film, on many occasions, people say I was a child.
I didn't know any better.
We were kids. They were 23 through potentially 30 years old, depending on when on where they were in this conversation. I understand that developmentally, we are more and more saying you're not really fully cooked until you're 25. I'm just going to throw this out there. Most children learn the meaning of the word no around the age of 4. Because they ask us for everything all the time and they get really annoying, and we definitely teach them the word no. Mm-hmm. The average child hears the word no hundreds of times a week. Explain to me why a 4-year-old can understand or be taught to understand the word no, and yet we don't expect 23-year-old medical school students to do it. These were not children. They were adults who were in training to become doctors, who saw a classmate of theirs who was so inebriated she was unable to consent, who woke up the next morning with hand-shaped bruises on her. But oh, guys, they're children.
They didn't know. And I think one of the things that this movie does so well about the language around consent too, and that's specifically Cassie, when she's not on her plan for Nina, but in her separate, like, I'm showing nice guys that they're not that nice plan, she never says no.
No, but gosh, did she imply it? Yeah.
He says a whole bunch of other things.
I should get a cab. I should leave.
I don't feel well.
I want to go to sleep. Can you please call me a cab?
I'm so tired. I don't feel well. All of these other things that indicate real clearly that she's not on board with what's happening to her.
What are you doing? What are you? That was the opening scene with Adam Brody when she starts saying, "What are you doing?" What are you doing? I texted my husband because he had heard about this and he doesn't have time to watch it in time for this. I'm gonna force him to watch it later. But he said at some point, he said, "Let me know, like, what, I'm just really curious, like how does she trick them into what they do?" And so I gave him a play-by-play of the opening scene and he goes, "Oh, the minute a woman says, 'What are you doing?' that the minute a human says, 'What are you doing?' that is your signal that they don't understand what's going on and that they are not on board." Like,
stop. Yeah. And I think, like, so much of the language too around their responses to her, and I was thinking about it as I was watching it, like, is this what men think we want to hear? Like,
yeah,
so
I mean, none of them ever apologized either at any point in time. Like, they just kept comforting her, like, shh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. The phrase "it's okay" happened a bajillion times in this film.
Yeah, and like telling her that she was beautiful and that they were so attracted to her, and that nonsense about, like, why do you wear so much makeup? Men don't want that. I just want to see you.
The pseudo-feminism of the quasi-enlightened horny man.
Oh, it was so sharp. The dialogue was so sharp. But and I think that language really showcased the inherent insecurity of masculinity, which is the final point that I want to make really briefly. Full credit to Don McPherson for this, planting this seed in my head that masculinity is inherently insecure in itself. If you don't understand what I mean, watch this movie and you'll see every single reaction these men have
to panic,
to being found out that she's not drunk, that she's Nina's friend, whatever, aside from Alfred Molina, who gets an asterisk. All of the other ones is panic, it's fear, it's, I'm in an unstable situation, I'm scared and I don't know what to do. It's fight or flight. And you see how quickly their projected confidence in all of these different scenarios is 100% BS, and they are totally insecure. And we don't construct masculinity in a way that they can be vulnerable, that they can be wrong, that they can step back from their actions. And so when they are forced to do it, they have no idea what to do about it. And I think that's, like, I can't believe that they made that somebody made a movie that shows this. And I will, like, climb every mountain and sing about how amazing this movie is, that we have the gift of these scenes.
And that leads perfectly into my final point, which is what Alfred Molina demonstrates. Alfred Molina is a lawyer whose job it was to exonerate all of these young boys against sexual assault claims. And what this shows is that this system works for no one. The system is good for no one. It doesn't teach boys to be resilient. It doesn't, like, he was in trauma for so many years that he actually hasn't slept in years, he says. And all he wants from her is he apologizes and repents, and he does need absolution. And when she gives it to him, it is one of my favorite scenes in the film. That you could tell if he could, he would crawl across glass to every single girl. And he can't, because probably a lot of them are dead. And he needs to be forgiven. But
he doesn't ask that of her, which I think is so much powerful too. He says, "I will never forgive myself."
Yeah. I need you to know that I will never forgive myself. And then she says, I forgive you. And it's like someone pulled a string.
Yeah.
Brilliant performance. Alfred Molina is always brilliant. So like not surprising at all. I appreciated that no one else got that out.
Mm-hmm.
That the final scene, loved it with my whole heart. This system works for no one.
Mm-hmm.
A system where we don't tell truths, a system where we assume the power of men based on their potential and we judge women based on their past, does not work for anyone. It is one of the things that is keeping us in the current stymied silo culture that we have now. There are absolutely times where consent is murky. And there are times where things got a little carried away and everyone's a little uncomfortable. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is times in which is the proportional statistical majority, upwards of 95% of sexual assault claims are found in fact. They have basis in fact. And it's actually not a he said, she said thing if you would look at the larger culture. The other issue, just really, really briefly, and I may not be making sense because I have so many thoughts about this that they all coalesce, is that it's the only crime in which the crime scene is a body.
Mm-hmm.
The entire crime scene is a body. And there's lots of conversations over whether or not that sexual assault should be criminally prosecuted in the way that it is, and if that's part of what's keeping us from actually actively kind of making a difference, because it has to get caught up in things like DNA and things like that. But the universities, let me be really clear, universities don't actually have to have a benefit of the doubt thing. Innocent until proven guilty is for criminal law only. It's not even for civil law. The burden of proof in civil law is not as high as innocent until proven guilty. That's just criminal cases. A university does not have to assume that. There are universities that do a great job of investigating Title IX accusations in this country. There are significantly more that do a piss poor job. And all of us right now, if you're listening, you're doing a liturgy in your head of the ones that are terrible. And we can do them too, probably in alphabetical and or Dewey Decimal order if you'd like them. I can start with the ones I went to. So it's a problem for everybody. And it's not going to get solved by pretending it's only a problem for women. Additionally, as we would like to remind you, in this April month of Sexual Assault Month, in which, as of this moment, James Charles has still not been kicked off of YouTube as we record this, it is not an issue that just affects young women or young people at all. Abuse is always about power, and the part of fragile masculinity is being taught that the way to be a man is to exercise your power and control over something smaller and weaker than you. Every single one of us on this planet, and most of us who are men, know that that's not actually what being a man means. Being a man means just being a human, and however that means for you. I will now step off my soapbox. That made, I'm sure, very little logical sense.
Oh, no. Well, it made sense to me, but I know you very
live in
well.
my brain with me. Yeah.
So
please watch this movie.
Just watch the movie. And speaking of other movies you should watch, next up on our whirlwind tour of awards season 2021, please join us next time for our coverage of Judas and the Black Messiah, which is getting a lot of buzz, especially for the phenomenal performance of Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton. And it's another story akin to our exploration of the United States of versus Billie Holiday, a version we don't often tell, and a human story that we don't often tell. And I remember really recently I learned who Fred Hampton was and what happened to him. And I was really, again, retroactively, as we often are, mad at our history lessons growing up. But it's a history lesson and it's a fantastic film. And if we don't see you for another video or on our Abby Research Reads channel, we will see you for Judas and the Black Messiah. Until then, everybody, be safe and be well.
Bye.